Makes me cry anyhow. Okay, we are going live, and let's see. Greetings, everybody. We are here, and we are also recording. So, Bill Johnson, and it's good. It's good to see Paul back with the Red Ensign. That's always a cheery sight. What has happened in Toronto, though, with in Toronto and Ontario generally? I mean, is there any remnant of the truckers' convoy there?
Well, what is happening across the country are protests this weekend. They're not, I hate to use the word occupations, but they're not permanent. They're actually moving. There's a big one in Ottawa today. There was a big one in Toronto today. There'll be, and in Kelowna, and there are probably a lot of other cities, and there'll be a big one in Vancouver tomorrow. And so, and there'll be another convoy in the Okanagan, and probably in many other places. People are out in the streets, and with the same agenda, an end to all the lockdowns and compensation for those people who were fired and lost their jobs because they wouldn't take the poke.
Well, now, are these convoys smaller than what happened at the peak, or are they also pretty large?
Well, they're not thousands of vehicles long. No, they're smaller, but they're spread across the country. Everything back on the 28th and 29th of January focused on Ottawa with sympathetic protests in other cities. Now, these protests are now right across the country and carrying on the same message. This past week, two of the leading lights in the protest, a fellow named King and Tamara Tillich, I think her name is. She ran the GoFundMe. Have had bail denied to them by a vindictive system. What they're charged with are nonviolent offenses. In fact, they're scarcely even anything more than bylaw offenses. But the system is absolutely ruthless. And this week, Trudeau had to withdraw the Emergency Measures Act. And my understanding from the internet is that there was a run on the banks. That beginning on Monday, that there was such a run on the banks that they started to howl at the government, call the people off. But people had very clearly learned the lesson. The government can steal from you, and the banks will steal from you on behalf of the government. So you can't trust the banks. And a lot of people were drawing the proper conclusions, and that was if they had any cash in the bank, they removed as much of it as they felt they could. I think it's really a jiggery pokery system. The bank doesn't have the cash to cover the deposits. It's all based on creating wealth, creating credit out of nothing. But okay, I'll leave my social credit behind. That's the old-fashioned social credit, not the communist stuff. Okay.
Let me interject something there, because something that kind of flummoxes me is why the left is so on board with positions that I would have thought the right would have taken. Like I read these various liberal websites. One that comes to mind is FARC, FARK.com, and they're talking about the banks as they're supporting the banks, the bank institutions, and they just really criticize Bitcoin, and they ridicule it. They say Bitcoin is silly and stupid. And when I was growing up, the counterculture, the opposition would all have been promoting this alternate currency, and it just seemed to be flipped on its head. And so why would the left be supportive of institutions like banking, and it's the right now that is really wary of them.
Well, it's
Uh,
pretty obvious
well,
to me that the left is identical with the establishment now, and the banks are basically funding the left. They're funding Black Lives Matter. They're funding Antifa. They're funding the Democratic Party. They're funding Biden, and basically the banks are realizing. I've been saying this for years, but banks are realizing Karl Marx's dream of abolishing private property. So the banks are really in the business of subverting all relics of capitalism and American freedom right now, I would say.
I think that it's a good question about the left. I first got an inkling of that when we were protesting back in 2003, 4, and 5, when Ernst Sundal was being kept in prison under the national security certificate, essentially saying, as he was not a Canadian citizen, he constituted a threat to national security. Now that's it was a kind of a complicated issue. It was a free speech issue, but we had a number of protests outside his prison, and we were on several occasions counter picketed by violent members of Antifa. And I said to them at one point, "Look, you are in favor of police state measures. I thought you people were anarchists. Well, they're not really anarchists, but I thought you people were against your authority, against you'd be against prisons and things like that." Well, I never got a rational answer. But the thing was, they support any repression of what they consider to be their enemies. The nationalists and so they're completely on side with the Trudeau globalists, the globalist agenda. They've been completely on side with the coercion in the medical field. We haven't seen the Antifa in any significant way for 2 years. I mean, they've just disappeared.
Well, does this mean that the left is comprised of a different demographic than when you or I were young? Because as I look back, I think that the leftists, when I was in high school, and maybe the kids were a couple of years older than I, they would, if I project them into today's society, I think that they would be pretty much on our side now. They would still be opposed to this government intervention, opposed to the overreach by the banks. And so maybe it's a new demographic that's taken on the mantle of the left than the ones that we knew when we were growing up.
Well, I don't know if it's a demographic, but I think it's a different ideology. The left that you and I knew in the 60s and 70s saw the, quote, establishment as right-wing, conservative, Christian, old-fashioned, in their terms, racist, and so on. Well, the left of the 60s and 70s are now in power. And they're racist, of course, but they're anti-us. They're anti-white. They're nothing. The last thing you'd say about most of them is that they're Christian. They're not conservative by any means. I mean, not the ones in power. So ideologically, they'd be rebelling against themselves. The only difference between the extreme left today and the ones in power may be a matter of that they'd like to move a bit faster, which is why the kind of the tale of two protests back just before COVID, the renegade Indians and radical white environmentalists blocked a couple of key railway lines in Canada to try to shut down a pipeline. It's a little more complicated, but that's the executive summary. They cost hundreds of millions of dollars of damage. But finally, Trudeau sent one of his cabinet ministers to negotiate with them. Because fundamentally, Trudeau, who hates the environmental industry and hates white people, was on their side. It's just it was maybe a little too fast or a little too in your face. Contrast that with the truckers who were nonviolent. He wouldn't talk to them, would not in any way, shape, or form negotiate with them, and wanted to nuke them. You know, hence the economic attack on them. Destroy them. Destroy them. Uh, he didn't see. He could see no value in these people because they were overwhelmingly white. They were everything his type, the globalists despise. You know, the white working class. You know, fairly patriotic, traditional, and all that. Everything that his worldview despises. So there'd be no negotiating with them, and the left would be on his side. So basically, the Antifa and the Black Lives Matter are the globalists. They are their they're street forces.
Yeah. Well, I do think it underscores the fact that the common man is really opposed to this government overreach on these various mandates. I took my wife to get her haircut today, and LA County really lags behind the nation in freeing up the mandates. But when she went in today, the barber says, "Oh, you don't have to wear a mask." And she was just elated. She's just a little barber, or I guess she was a woman barber. Maybe it's a hairstylist. And she was delighted. My wife was delighted that we didn't have to wear masks anymore. And that's just a common man, common woman, just delighted at these things. And then we had visiting with us one of my wife's sister's kids. This handsome family with 5 really young kids. The oldest is 12, I guess, or 13 maybe. And he wouldn't pass the sacrament in church. He wouldn't give out the communion because he was required to wear a mask. 12-year-olds pass the sacrament. And he was the only one. He said, "No, I'm not going to wear a mask." And so the bishop.
What religion is this?
Latter-day Saint.
Really? Okay. I didn't know that about the sacrament. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And so in any event, he over the last year or so, ever since he turned 12, he refused to wear a mask. And so the bishop says, "Oh, we really need you to pass the sacrament. We don't have enough kids to do that." He says, "No, I'm not going to wear a mask." And so neither side would give in. And this little 12-year-old would not wear a mask. He's the only one, and he wasn't ostracized by the other 12-year-olds, but he wasn't embraced by them either. He just sit there, and he would sit with the deacons, and everyone else would pass the sacrament, and he wouldn't do it. And so then they lifted the mask mandate, and so he was able to pass sacrament, and he was really happy, and all the 12-year-olds was really happy, and the bishop was really happy. Everybody was happy that he could do that, and he won, because he held out. And so even 12-year-old kids want to battle the overreach by the government. So I can see why Canada would be so hot and bothered to fight against these mandates.
Yeah, there is so much cynicism when everywhere I go where this issue comes up. I try to engage people in conversations, and privately you get a lot of agreement. Like we have under the federal mandate, airports are federally controlled, so you have to wear a mask. But you have to be vaxxed in order to fly on Air Canada. So when I was checking in Edmonton today, I didn't have my mask on. "Oh, so you have to wear a mask?" I said, "Oh, I thought this province was free." Yeah, I mean, of course, I'm only kidding her, but because the province is dropping most of the mandates this coming week. "Oh," she said, "no, but this is federal." "Oh," I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "But it doesn't make any sense, we all have to be vaccinated, and that protects us, doesn't it?" "Well, then why would we have to wear a mask? Or do the vaccinations don't protect us, in which case, why are we forced to have them?" She said, I know. She said, I said, "But it doesn't make any sense." I ask this question everywhere I go. Explain to me. And well, an Air Canada employee said, "Well, we got the orders from above." I said, "You mean the Lord told you?" No. Yeah, I love to F with them. I really do. It's a lot of because they don't have an answer. There is no answer. I said, "Well, it really isn't about health, is it? It's about control." And you get a lot of nods. And some don't agree, obviously, but Yeah, there's a spirit of rebellion out there, and it's fantastic. You know, a 12-year-old carrying the ball that really his elders should be doing, but um, there really is a hunger for freedom. I see it on the ground, and Americans are more freedom conscious than Canadians. So it must be, yeah, your country must be just so ready for the truckers.
Well, when I went to last night, I went with one of my daughters to a play. They finally opened up. Oh, hi, kitty cat. And the play was, it was a Sondheim musical, just absolutely the stupidest musical written. But because Sondheim had done it, it was popular. But we went in there. It was a very exclusive, I mean, not exclusive, but very high class venue. And we go in there and sit down there. It's only about half full, and most you don't have to wear masks anymore. And I looked around at the people that were wearing masks, and I was thinking, is there a certain type that would wear a mask and a certain type that would not? Because Orange County is traditionally has been pretty conservative. And so I looked around because I was bored with the stupid play. So I looked around to see who all was wearing a mask and see if I could tell if I saw them on the street, would I think there'd be mask wearers or not? And, it was kind of a touchy-feely, inchoate theme, but I thought, yeah, I could see that type of person wearing a mask. They're mostly everybody was white people. I mean, the town that I was in is surrounded by Vietnamese who moved into the area, but there's an enclave of if it's art, it's going to be white people, and they're all white people in there. And I kind of think, yeah, maybe it was just my projecting what they would be, but I thought, yeah, that looks like a type of person that I'd catch wearing a mask. Probably when he's driving alone in his car or in his backyard gardening. So yeah,
Yeah, I've said this before, but there are some ages that desperately cry out for a great satirist. And I think it's too bad that he's no longer in his prime. But that John Cleese, who's a pretty good guy in many of his sentiments, would have so much fun with this. When I was at the Edmonton airport yesterday, waiting for what was I waiting for? Oh yeah, the luggage. The announcement came over about every couple of minutes about having to wear masks, and then another announcement that keep close watch on your baggage, and if you see any suspicious activity, report it to airport security or the police. And I thought, what would be suspicious? Everybody around me is wearing a mask. Are they all banditos? How would I tell unless somebody had a sign on saying I'm a crook, I want to steal your luggage? It's absolutely absurd, and we just slither into third world status. We have a very popular donut and coffee chain in Canada called Tim Hortons. So there was happened to be one at the airport in Edmonton. They serve donuts and croissants and coffee and tea and soup and a few little things. So I said, well, what type of soup do you have today? Well, just one. But do you have any chili? Oh, that's gone. Okay. Then I said, well, okay, I'll have the soup that you do have with a white bun. Oh, we don't have any more. We have just brown ones. I said, well, you still have coffee though, right? I thought it's so third world. I mean, that's their stock and trade. It's like the Australian song about the pub with no beer. I mean, but we just slither into this things. Yeah, they sort of work, but not quite. And I noticed that even in the management of the airports. Every one airport I've been in the last week, at least one of the moving sidewalks isn't working, and one of the escalators isn't working. And I mean, but boy, the announcements keep booming every couple of minutes about having to wear a mask. So they've got the mask enforcement down right, but they can't run the mechanics. And from my trips to the third world, that's characteristic. In a third world country, things sort of kind of work, but sometimes they don't. In a first world country, it works, and right. More and more we don't work.
Not only that aspect of things not working, it's just the camaraderie that used to exist among a people is gone in our society. Like in Japan, you still have it. Like if you're out in a train station or somewhere, and someone gets up to leave their luggage there, all the neighbors there that sitting around would protect that luggage, make sure to be there for the guy to come back, just naturally. Or if you leave a violin on the train and you get off with the violin, which has happened when my wife and I lived in Japan, it would be, if you forget it, leave it, it would be there. You go to the end of the line and no one would take up a $100,000 violin. It would be there. And so
I was exactly thinking about that, Bill. Uh, when I was in Japan, and I certainly have not traveled nearly as much as you have there, but when I was with my guide and companion on trains, well, I was going to say trains and boats and planes, but trains, planes, oh come on, subways,
Planes,
they
trains, and
work.
automobiles.
Yeah, the escalators work, the elevators work, the place works, and they've got their trains timed to like practically down to the second. The country works, and more I see Canada is slipping into that slack. Majoring in the minors. The masks are utterly irrelevant. Why stress that? Run the damn airport. And I know that from personal experience, or actually people who've told me about it. Minor things like somebody left his wallet, no, left his credit card at a hotel, check-in desk, and went off, on some errands. The hotel went to extraordinary efforts, contacted the credit card, and actually tracked the guy down on his cell phone in order to return the credit card. In parts of North America, I would have said that he'd be damn lucky to get his card back. He could pretty much kiss that card goodbye, and that's really. I find that very admirable on the part of people of the people, and that's the camaraderie we used to have. But that's the problem with a multicultural society. Almost everybody in Japan is Japanese.
I know. And see, if you take a look at Japan in the 1860s, before Commodore Perry came and opened it up at the point of a gun on the ship, if you look at Japan back then, they were 5 feet or shorter because they were malnutrition. They were as backward as could be. What was that?
I don't know.
It was really a primitive society. And then they opened it up, and then they saw what the West could happen, and they started mimicking it. Even if you look at 30 years later, they're all wearing top hats and handlebar mustaches, and the dress just like England. And then they started copying everything they could see. It was an advantage. And what happens is now everything works. Why? Because they mimicked everything that the West had, and they kept it, and they still kept the one big family concept, which we have lost in the West because of our crazy desire towards multiculturalism, and diversity is our strength concept. So yeah, that's true. But now we're getting kind of off topic, and I want to get back to this convoy that's coming in the United States that's going to be taking place. And what I heard, and this is kind of maybe what scares me the most, is that I heard that one trucker went to Penske and rented a truck, and he got in the convoy, and Penske found out about it. I say not Mr. Penske, the Hertz Rent-A-Car Penske, and they found out he was going to the convoy, so they pressed a button and shut down the engine. The engine wouldn't run. So these new modern cars have these cutoff buttons on them, and the United States government wants every car to have this cutoff button. Why? So that they can control even our transportation mode. And it just outraged me that Penske people would say, "Oh, we don't like this guy going to be a trucker, even though he rented the truck, he can be paying for the truck, and he's going to be doing all this stuff." They didn't like the purpose of it, so they have a kill switch that they can press. And if that comes to all of our cars, that's just going to be another loss of our freedoms.
That's really frightening. I hope Patriots. That was Hertz, was it?
No, it was Penske. I don't know. Penske is, I think, a different company, but it's it's a big company. And I thought that Penske would be kind of supportive because they're big sponsors of NASCAR, and NASCAR really say, let's go Brandon all the time now.
Well, I hope Patriots will picket some of the outlets of this Pinsky. Yeah, you somehow you've got to take the war to them, embarrass them. I mean, I'm sure there are other options to Pinsky, and that's what has to be done. And I'm up here in regards to the banks. I don't think we're through with them yet. There's got to be protests against these huge corporations that basically are totally anti-freedom. I think there could be huge possibilities with this trucker convoy in the States.
Tell us a little bit about it. I just heard snippets about it. Now, where are they starting? Where they're ending up? You say they're going to DC?
Yes. Now, my understanding is they're converging from various points in the country. There was I saw a brief item about some truckers in Pennsylvania, which is not all that far from DC. And then there were some coming from California. I don't have a lot of information, but I think the idea has really caught on. It's caught on big in Australia and New Zealand.
But in Washington, D.C., how is the United States government and the local D.C. government going to handle this? Are they going to do the same thing that they did for the January 6th and then start arresting people and put them in jail and hold them as political prisoners? I bet you they will.
I don't know.
I just wanted to flash.
Texas.
Just wanted to flash you. It was somebody in Wichita Falls, Texas, which is definitely not one of the hotbeds of liberalism, who was left stranded by truck owner, and that just happened yesterday. It's wild. A Burt Burnett man. Burt Burnett was one of my ancestors.
Okay. Yeah.
Burt Burnett man was taking part in a national truck convoy protest, found himself without a ride Friday. Jeff Sandberg has been a vocal in support of his convoy on social media and was driving a rig bearing a banner covered in slogans. We're just trying to show that people, what the people who back us believe, and our beliefs of our truck, our country needs to go back to. Sanders told the New York Times on Wednesday. Well, at least the New York Times covered him and didn't say that he was. I don't know what they said, but anyhow, by Thursday night, Sandberg was sidelined because the company he rented his truck from, Penske, shut down his truck remotely. Penske does not support the People's Convoy movement, Sandberg said in a Facebook stream. So I'm in a situation where I'm not going to be able to continue on.
Wow. Now, see, I highly doubt if the Penske contract says you can't use your convoy to go to DC and participate in it. So I just think what they did was a contract violation.
Yeah, this would be a role for a good lawyer. That seems to me to be outrageous. Now, unfortunately, that's not quoting the company. That's what the Sandberg says, that the Penske does not support the convoy. It shouldn't be a matter of supporting the convoy. They're renting the blasted truck. He may want to just drive around the block 200 times or go and visit his sainted Aunt Mary in Kansas. It's none of their business as long as he returns the truck in good order.
Right, but correct me if I'm wrong, Charles, but I don't think a lawyer would handle this case because it's a contract dispute and you can't get punitive damages based on a contract dispute or treble damages. All you can get is the loss. He'll get reimbursed for $800 for his efforts.
If you send a 30-day notice, you can get attorney's fees if they don't settle right away.
In what state?
In Texas, where this happened.
Okay, all right. Okay, I didn't know that.
It's possible that a lawyer would take it in Texas because of that 30-day demand, and they could call it deceptive trade practices too. I don't know. I mean, if they don't, we all know to expect community standards compliance on Facebook, right? I mean, I've just been devastated by Facebook taking me down, gone from thousands to hundreds. And that's rough, but we know that it happens to lots of people. But this is, I think, what Paul was talking about earlier, an example of social credit, that Penske is saying, well, we have community standards too. And so I don't know that they disclose that. I mean, Facebook at least discloses that, right? They tell you in advance that they've got community standards, and they don't tell you.
But they don't tell you what they are in any way that is meaningful.
But
it's like me saying, I've got principles, but I won't tell you what they are.
Yeah.
It's it's very much like the world is becoming very much like you remember the scene in Casablanca where Major Strasser is very offended that the crowd singing La Marseillaise drowned out the Germans singing Die Wacht am Rhein, and he tells Captain Renault, close this place. And Captain Renault says, I have no grounds. And he says, make up some. And so Captain Renault says, I'm closing your establishment down. I'm shocked, absolutely shocked to find there is gambling here. And then one of the major D's comes by and says, you're winning, sir.
Yeah, right.
There were some very good lines in those scripts.
Yeah, but let's take it to the end. When is the convoy going to converge on DC, and when is Biden's, what do you call it, State of the Onion speech? When is that going to take place? Is that this coming week?
I don't know. I mean, let's see. I guess I'll have to check that out too. I mean, I have to say that my prejudice is so huge. I never watched Obama on TV even once when he was president. I would shut him off. I refuse to look at him, and I feel almost the same way about Biden.
Yeah. I think Eisenhower's was the last State of the Union speech I watched. But in any event, I think.
Oh my God! It's Mardi Gras. It's Tuesday, March 1st. How do you like that?
Okay, so it's coming
That's an outrage. That's an outrage on Mardi Gras.
Well, when they pull into DC, I'm going to make a prognostication, and I'm not going to step out on the limb because I think it's probably pretty accurate. I think there's going to be a lot of arrests if it actually takes place, and there's going to be a lot of oppression by the DC establishment, by the government establishment. I would think that if I were going to go to make a protest, I'd want to go anywhere but Washington, D.C. I think that what Trudeau did in Canada is just going to be small potatoes what the DC establishment can do to these people. That's my guess.
If that happens, that will radicalize a huge class of or group of people across America. We're just beginning to see the results of of the Trudeau's repression in Canada.
I still fear, though, it's just going to be impotent outrage. I don't know what's going to take just to move to the next level.
I guess we'll see. Washington, D.C. is from my recollection, is very vulnerable to the bridge crossings. I mean, you could isolate Washington, D.C. by taking out a couple of bridges. I don't mean taking out, but blocking a couple of bridges. You could massively mess up that place.
Right. And then what would happen is the people that normally go to work won't go to work, and they'll still get paid because they're government employees, and they'll say, hey, this is great. I can put around the house and still get paid because, the wealthiest zip codes in the United States all are the bedroom communities surrounding DC because they just eat off the government trough and they get so much money. And the DC, the federal government, has caused with its policies, the Rust Belt and the destruction of thousands of jobs and unemployment by all sorts of good working people that can't get jobs, while the DC government workers get paid and raises and salaries. So I think that's going to need to go first. We need to turn DC into a white collar Rust Belt.
Yeah. Well, aren't most of those people working from home? They are in Canada. Most of the federal civil servants are working from home. Well, working in quotation marks.
Yeah, right. That's what I was going to say. You beat me to it. Yeah, that's true. Well, I guess we'll see what happens. We'll reconvene next week and find out what went on Tuesday. If Charles is there, Charles might be incapacitated because he's going to be dancing with searching for beads on Mardi Gras. I don't know.
That's what I was wondering. He'll have a report from Mardi Gras. I mean, they are still having it in New Orleans, right?
It's big.
It wasn't canceled because of COVID.
There's a parade going on right now on St. Charles, just a couple blocks away from here. You can't really hear it, but I can. They didn't have one last year at all. They had one in 2020, and they say that's why New Orleans got a particularly bad dose of COVID. But it's back on, and the mask mandate here expires on Mardi Gras. It's very strange.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Very good then.
Well, I mean, what is going on though with Biden? I mean, what do you think? Do you all think that he's really fully conscious?
Well, I think that he's old, and I think that his mental capabilities have diminished. I don't know how much dementia has set in, because we do know that Ronald Reagan had dementia towards the latter years, and what was his name, Wilson. I think the last couple of years of Wilson's life, his second wife ran the country, unbeknownst to the nation, because he was incapacitated. And so I don't know how much influence his handlers have. Probably a lot. But I think Biden is very much a sponge, and he just follows the atmosphere around him. Because I have seen clips where he is taking a very anti-black stance, not saying things that he doesn't want, basically cultural, doesn't want to change the culture from white to black. And that's when he was younger, because that was the sentiment of the day. So I think he just goes which way the wind blows. And right now, the current establishment is anti-white, pro-black, and so that's what he's promoting. I don't know how much his handlers are pushing it, or if it's just because he is a person without principle.
Well, he's now. I think he has a lot of big problems. There was the absolute debacle of what happened in Afghanistan. There is this war in the Ukraine, and for reasons we discussed last night, I think he's on the wrong side of history. I don't know whether Putin will pull it off or not, but this is getting very ugly. And then there's there'll be soaring oil prices, because one of his very first acts was to give the old knee in the groin to Canada by canceling the big pipeline that was almost already completed down to the President Trump made America energy self-sufficient. It was a brilliant tactic. Now America is dependent to some extent on oil imported from Russia, from Nigeria, from Venezuela, all of varying degrees of unreliability. And oil prices are going to soar, and that will hit everybody.
We've already seen prices soar astronomically here in California. I mean, when I was 16 and I first started driving my 1966 Rambler Classic, I remember pulling into the gas station and putting in a quarter worth of gas. Gasoline was 24.9 cents a gallon, and I only had a quarter with me, so I put in a gallon worth of gas per quarter. And
Today you would get 2 drops.
I know, and now gas is over $5 a gallon, and so I was just projecting how much more income do I have to earn now for the cost of living when I was 16 paying a quarter for gas, and now it's 5 and a quarter. And so we're already there. And it's not, of course, it's not just gas. I used to buy candy bars for a nickel, and now, some places they're $2.50 for a candy bar. Well, I don't know. I don't eat candy anymore because I'm losing weight. But when I did eat them, they were expensive.
Yeah, but I think he's got a number of problems tumbling down on him. It'll be very interesting to see how he handles that. And I understand from today's news that there is some pushback to his nomination of this negress judge to the Supreme Court, because he promised to have a black female. I wonder what it would sound like if a president said, "I'm going to appoint a white Protestant male to the Supreme Court. He's a racist." Oh, blah 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 blah.
It's going to happen next time we get a white guy in the office. It's next time Trump gets, well, I don't know if Trump will get back in the office, and then he'll lead the way, and then we'll get someone else in there who's going to make that very statement. So, well, that's my suggestion.
Well, luckily, his appointee will only reestablish the status quo when Judge resigned. It is not a change in the ideological makeup. But I thought it was a very interesting discussion we had last night about that some of the so-called good guys are not at all that good.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem with Clarence Thomas is huge. I mean, people think he's just God's gift to the right, and he's not.
Oh, he's black, red, or white woman. The last good Supreme Court justice that we have was Judge Taney. Ever since that time, it's gone downhill.
Was Judge
Taney? That's the Dred Scott. Decision.
that was 1854, not 1954.
Yeah. Right. Well, whatever. That statement might come back to haunt me. But I had a lawyer who wanted to get some ducks, and I raised ducks, and so I was getting rid of some of them. When I raised them, I just had a bunch of ducks, and my house cleaner found out about that, so she said, "Look, he wanted to get some ducks." So he came over to pick up some ducks, and I gave them to him, and he said that he named all of the ducks after Supreme Court justices. And I says, "Okay, here, you can have this one, but you have to name it Judge Taney." And he turned red. He said, "I'm not taking that duck." So, but
that's hilarious.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we got to send Paul on his way to the political cesspool. So tell Edwards hello for me, and
I will.
And I'll see if I can tune in. In fact, I'll see if I can tune in and make sure you say hello for me.
Okay. You'll hold me to it.
Okay.
Well, I'll see you on Friday, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Unless you want to do an emergency meeting the day after the state of the Union.
No, let's do it on Friday.
Okay, let's keep in touch on that. I mean, I probably would be available Wednesday, and that's the State of the Union. Well, okay.
Okay, I would be too.
That's Ash Wednesday, and I'm sure that Biden will give us lot to feel ashen about.
Okay, and Charles, I expect you to put one of those dots on your head, because I remember a few years ago, we never had any Catholics that put dots on the forehead during Ash Wednesday, and I remember this was maybe 10 years ago. It just shows how backward I was with regard to some of these religions. There was somebody got in the elevator and said, "Hey, you've got something on your forehead," and she said, "It's Ash Wednesday." And I thought, well, okay, what's Ash Wednesday? I didn't know what Ash Wednesday was up to 10 years ago. And I certainly didn't see people with dots on their forehead. So this coming Wednesday, Charles, I expect a dot on your forehead. Oh no, you're Episcopalian. I expect a dot on your forehead, Paul.
Well, it's not really a dot. It's a crudely made cross. It's not like a Hindu bullseye. I mean dot.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. Okay.
Well, gosh, you didn't take much diversity training, did you?
Yeah,
Sometimes,
I grew up
sometimes it
around
turns into a
Mormons.
smudge, though.
I grew up around Mormons and Methodists, and that was it.
Well, I hope you all have a really good rest of the weekend.
Okay, very good.
Enjoy
Okay.
your M&Ms.
All right.
Okay, good.
Thanks a lot.
Good night, everybody. Well, okay. So that's where the world stands, and we're waiting for the state of the onion. And think about it. Onions make you cry, and the online journal, The Onion, makes